Anyway, all right, so 3.1, we're going to talk about simple interest. 3.2, we've already talked about compound interest, so we're going to get into that a little bit. So for the rest of the semester, and we'll be done with all our coverage of this stuff when you get back from fall break. We don't have too much more to do. And it's all finance. So business people, maybe you'll find this interesting. It certainly is important, not just for business people to know, but every single person who's alive needs to know something about finance. All right, so to start with, we're going to look at simple interest. Okay, this is the kind of interest if you go to a pawn shop or if you go to like a payday loan where they really rip you off. They do loans and stuff with simple interest. Doesn't have anything to do with compounding. So the formula you're going to learn is I equals PRT. You maybe have seen that before. That's usually how you start learning about interest. So I is the interest. P is the principal. Principal just means whatever you're starting with. And then what's real important about this is R is an annual rate. Okay, it's an annual rate. So it has to be converted. Hold on, that's not right. I'm doing that on the wrong thing. So you want to write that as a decimal like you're used to doing. The time is what's real important. That's the years. So one thing that you should write a note to yourself on, because this is where students mess up on this, you always have to convert to years. So like for instance, if the loan is for 6 months, then you don't put 6 in for T. You have to change that to a decimal part of a year and so forth. Okay. So the next thing is there's 2 formulas. That's your first formula. The second one is how you find the amount after interest is earned. So one way, and this is one way you can always do this, is just take the principal and add on the interest. Okay, so for instance, if you had a savings account with $500 in it, and then you earned $50 interest, you just do 500 plus 50 and get 550. Okay, you can also use this formula, and this formula comes from there. If you factor out a P in this expression, if you take a P out, you would have P times 1 to get P plus RT, and just kind of distribute in your head and make sure you understand that. So P times 1 is P, P times RT is PRT. They're the same formula. You can use either form. Sometimes it's better to do that. Sometimes it's better to do that. But they're essentially the same formula. Okay? So we're going to go through some problems on this. You'll need to use your calculator. So these are simple interest, pretty easy to work with if you know to do the conversion the right way. Okay, so with this one, this says that you have 5,000 loaned for 4 months at a 3.5% annual rate. And you're always given annual rates on what you're looking at in simple interest. So what I'm going to do on this, let's just write down the formula. Go ahead and write down the formula. I is equal to PRT. Okay, and that's what you're going to do. You're going to do all this on your calculator. Okay, so the principal is whatever you start with. In this case, that's going to be your $5,000. Your interest rate is 3.5. Now you got to change that to a decimal like we've already learned how to do. So if you have 3.5, move the decimal back 2 to get 0.035. Okay, like this. Okay. Now the next thing you got to do is the time always has to be in years. Okay, if you just put a 4 there, let me just show you what would happen here. One thing you got to learn how to do is think about your answers on this. So basically, if I did like 5,000, so if I took 5,000 times 0.035 times 4, I would end up getting $700 interest. That's pretty good, okay? In fact, that's way too good, all right? What you have to do, because you've only got this loan here for 4 months, okay? So what you have to do is you have to say 4 out of 12, right? And what you're doing is there's 12 months in a year. So if you're converting months to a year, you got to divide it by 12, okay? And then you can go straight to your calculator. You don't have to worry about reducing the fraction or anything. I always recommend on these problems just do parentheses. You can't go wrong if you do parentheses. So that's why you're going to see me doing this. I mean, you don't have to, but it's kind of a good rule of thumb. So I'm going to put 5,000 in parentheses times 0.035 And then in parentheses, I'll just do 4 divided by 12. Okay, that's just going to change that to a decimal. You're not going to get 700. You're going to get a much smaller thing. So what you're going to end up getting is about $58, and we'll round that off to 33 cents, which is much more rational since you're only doing a loan for 4 months. Okay, all right? So that would be how that simple interest works. So basically, real simple, you do I equals PRT, and be sure that your time is in years. If it isn't, you got to convert it. That's the biggest thing you got to know about doing these, okay? All right, so the next one, it says how much interest will you have to pay for a 60-day loan of $400, 30% interest. This would kind of remind me of those payday loan places that sometimes charge way over 100% interest because they're short term. All right, and this would go like this. We have I equals PRT, so we're going to do exactly the same thing. So we're going to take the $400 principal. That's what we start with. What are you going to use for 30%? 0.30. Don't forget to do that. That's another thing students forget to do. Move that decimal back 2, or you're going to get a nonsense answer. Now it says 60 days. How do you convert 60 days to a year? Actually, you're going to use 360. Okay? So what you're going to use, and this is standard business practice, is a 360-day year. And you're going to do that on all these problems, so we're going to do 360. Yep. Okay, that's common business practice. And let me explain why. First of all, the benefit of 360 is if you divide it by 12, then all of your months have 30 days. So it makes everything very simple. So you will find almost all banks and credit card companies and stuff, they base everything on a 360-day year. And that actually, to some extent, comes from the days when we didn't have calculators. 360 is a nicer number than 365. But the main idea is your months are all 30 days then. So that's the idea. Okay, so again, you just put this on your calculator. You don't have to reduce that fraction. You can change it to a decimal, or you can just do it like this. The safe way is to use parentheses. You don't have to if you know what you're doing, but you're going to see me do it this way because this is safe. So I do this times this. Oops, close parentheses, and then the new parentheses, just put 60 divided by 360, or if you want to reduce that fraction before you put it in, you can do that. Okay, so we get an answer of $20. Is that a logical answer to you guys? $20 on $400? Is that logical? So what would happen if you got like $500 on that? Would that make you think I've screwed up? Because I see that from students all the time. They get an answer and they just move on. I mean, think about your answer. $20 is logical for a 60-day loan of only $400. Okay, so be sure that you do this part right there. That's what's important. Okay, everybody okay so far? Okay, simple interest is simple. It really is. It's simpler than compound interest and other things. Okay, so the next one, what we're going to do is they say that a loan of $8,500 was repaid at the end of 8 months. Okay, and what this says is what size repayment check, principal and interest, was written if you had 6.25 annual interest rate. Well, we need to find the interest first. Okay, so you got a loan for $8,500. So to pay off that loan, you paid more than $8,500. So the first thing you need to do is you need to go ahead and do interest equals PRT. All right, we'll just do that like we've been doing. So we have the principal's $8,500. Okay, the interest rate, you're going to do 0.0625, like that. Move your decimal back 2. And then what are you going to do with the 8 months? Good, 8 over 12, good. You got to change that to a year. If you put 8 in, it'll be ridiculous, okay? So again, we just go straight to the calculator, okay? And you can go like this if you want to. You can go 8,500 without the parentheses times 0.0625. Okay, your calculator actually will do okay on this if you leave off the parentheses. I just kind of like students to be kind of cautious about this, but if you do that, it'll work on the simple interest formula. So that gives you about $354. and then we'll round that to 17 cents. Now, that's not the answer to the problem, okay? Because the question was, how much do you pay? So what do you need to do? Your loan was $8,500. You were charged interest. What do you need to do? You add them together, exactly. So the amount is just going to be the principal plus the interest, okay? So our principal is $8,500. Then we can take our calculator and add that, the 354.17, and then that'll give how much it takes to pay off that loan, okay? Usually students have enough background with basic finance so they know that, okay? So 8,500 plus 354.17 would give the amount that it's going to take to pay off your loan, okay? So that would end up being $8,854.17 would be your answer to your problem, okay? That's a payoff amount, okay? All right, was there any questions so far? Simple interest is, if you know the formula, it's not going to be that hard to do, okay? So let's go ahead and go to the next page. I'll let you work the next two out. This is a real short section. We're not going to go very deeply into this. I'll spend more time on 3.2 and 3.3. So let's go ahead and try those. I'll walk around and see if you got it set up okay. You can use your calculator. All I want to see on your paper on this kind of thing is what you're putting in your calculator. Just get your formula set up. That's mainly what I want to see. And the rest of it, you can go straight to your calculator. Main thing I want to kind of check you on is the 9 months and 90 days. And that's removing your decimal back correctly. Those are the two most commonly missed parts of those problems. Okay, that's good. Go to your calculator, should be okay. Okay, that should be good. Okay, that's good. Good. Yep. That's it. Okay. $412.50 on the first one. Is that what I'm seeing for most of you here? Okay. And then the second one, you're going to have to do the amount that you're paying off. Good. I have no idea. That sounds right. So what you got? Yeah, I mean, you did the interest okay, and just added the principal. It's a logical answer. That's good. Now be sure on that, number two, you get used to using the 360-day year. That's common practice. That's what our book is going to do, and my math lab is going to do that and everything. Okay, so it looks like everybody got the first one. It's just principal times interest, 0.055, and then 9 over 12. And what was that again? 412.50, is that what everybody got? Okay, these problems usually aren't very hard for students as long as they know how to deal with the time part of that. Okay, then the next one, you would go I equals PRT. So our principal on this is like a payday loan, $400. The interest rate's 40%, which is typically high on those kind of loans. And then 90 days, what did you do with 90 days? Over 360, good. And what did you get there, 40? Is that right? Okay, because that's all calculator. All right, and then the amount would be principal plus interest. So principal's 400, interest is 40. So to pay off that loan, it should be $440. Okay, is everybody getting that okay? Okay, I don't see too many problems. Usually this simple interest usually is not hard for people to learn. Everybody okay so far? Okay, all right. So this next thing here, and we're going to look at some of these problems now backwards a little bit. So this one says that you have a radio commercial that says you only pay 10 cents a day for each, and that percent's backwards, kind of a dyslexic thing there. 600%, no, oh, that's a $600, not a percent, okay? So that should be a percent, okay? If you borrow 1,000 for 90 days, what amount will you repay, and what annual interest rate is the company charging? So you got to think a little bit more about this problem, but ultimately what it's saying on here is you're paying 10 cents a day for each 600 borrowed, all right? So what we're going to do on this then, it says that you're borrowing 1,000 for 90 days, and we're going to go ahead and just look at the same formula, interest equals PRT. We'll need to do that. Okay, and let's see kind of what we're given in here. So we have I equals PRT. Well, in this problem, first of all, it looks like you have the principal is 1,000. We don't know the interest rate. So what we know is we know the principal, we know the times 90 days, we can figure out the interest. They gave you enough information to figure that out, and then that would leave us with R. If you got an equation, you want to make sure that you have only one unknown, and if you do, you can figure it out. So the first thing we're going to do is just going to figure out what the interest is. Well, they say that you pay 10 cents a day for each 600 that you borrow, okay? So what that's going to end up being on this then is if you take 10 like this, if you take 10 cents times 600, and if you took that on your calculator, that would end up giving like $60 on that then, okay? That would be the interest on that $600. Okay, that's what that's 600 a day though, so I'm not doing that right. I didn't see the day. So you would go like this. You'd have interest is equal to PRT. So it would be, hold on, 10 cents a day. What am I missing here? Well, look at it this way. I think I was on the right track. I mean, you're doing 10 cents each day for 600 borrowed. Okay.
Would it be 10 cents times 90 days?
Yes, thank you. That's what I need. Okay. Very good. Okay. So that would be, you have a 90-day loan on that, so it's 10 cents every day. So that would end up giving you, that's just $9. Okay, like that. So that means for that 90-day loan, then you're going to have $9. Okay. All right. Now when you set this up, it's going to go like this. So in our formula, that would have the principal would be 1,000. So we know that. The interest rate is R. We know that. Then we have the 90 days. And let's see, the 90 days, you would have to do that over 360 like that. So you've got your principal, you've got your rate, and then you've got this, okay? So what you have on this is you have $9 on that then. Now, where's the 600 come in? That's what I'm confusing myself with. Am I missing something, or is that important?
You subtract the 6.
Why am I struggling with this? Has anybody got any ideas? Maybe I want to go on vacation. Crap. That's not making sense to me.
You just scribble it out. It didn't happen.
Pretend like it didn't happen. I'm recording myself though. That's not good. Yeah, okay. Let's come back to that. I'll think about that. I'm missing something real simple on that. It says for each 600 borrowed. In that 1,000, I'm not quite processing that right or some reason.
To the other 200 if it's,
The other what?
so it would be like 1,000, but it's in the increment of 600. So like 2.
Well, there's
Oh, so you would just,
So then
would you just add that $9 if so if we solve that equation, then we just add the 9 to it? Would that work? Or how would you write for every 600? It would be added $9. Or Wait, what?
Let's come back to it, okay? We'll look at it during break. Something will come to me. I'm just missing some key part of it, and it's probably real simple. So let's come back to it, okay? All right, let's move to this next one here. All right, so let's see. This says, what annual interest rate is earned by a 12-week treasury bill, that T-bill's treasury bill, has a maturity value of $1,000 that sells for $919.30. Okay, now there's two formulas you want to use on this. Now, when you start doing the amount, and I think that's what I'm missing on example 4. I'm pretty sure that's what I'm missing. So we're going to go like, there's two formulas. The amount is the principal plus interest. We can use that formula, or we can use the other form, which is the amount is P times 1 plus RT. Okay, so we're going to use either one of those forms like this. Well, actually, what happens on this one, what we're going to do is, you know this part right here. You know the amount, because that's the maturity value. So that right there is going to be 1,000. So we're going to put that in there. Okay, the principal we also know. That's what you start with, because that's a smaller number. So that's going to plug in there. That's the 919.30. Okay, and then the other thing we know is it's a 12-week bill. Right, so what we have to do with this too is like we've been doing, you don't put 12 in. How do you convert 12 weeks to a year? How many weeks are in a year? 52. That's another reason why we do the 360-day year, so it's all consistent. Okay, and what that does is it leaves you R, and that's what you're trying to find is what that interest rate is. So you're better off to use this formula because it has everything in it. All right, so what you want to set up then is you want to make sure you have this written down. We'd have 1,000 is equal to $919.30 times 1 plus, and then you can go ahead and I'm going to just write this as R times, and I'm just going to take my calculator and do a decimal right now. I mean, you can do that later if you want to, but I'm just going to go 12 over 52. And that's equal to that number. So let's round. If you have to round, I recommend that you round off to at least 4 decimals. So let's say 0.2308. The more decimals you use, the more accurate you're going to end up getting. So this is a pretty reasonable way to do this, is like this. Okay? Now you have to solve this equation. You have 2 choices. One choice would be do a distributive property. To me, it's not necessary. It's better if you do this. Since this 900 is multiplied, you can divide both sides by that number. That's what I would do. Like that. Okay, you can do steps on your calculator if you want to. I recommend as much as you can to do all your rounding at the end. So I'm just going to bring this down. That's 1,000 over 919.30. is equal to 1 plus, and I'm going to write that as 0.2308 like that. And then you got an R. Okay, when I'm doing solving an equation, you have solved equations of this type throughout the semester. So then the last thing I'm going to do is if I want to get R by itself, well, what do you need to do? You need to move the 1 to the other side, then divide by the number in front of R. Okay, so what we would have from here is we would have 1,000 over 919.30 minus 1 is equal to 0.2308R. And I think students a lot of times on this just kind of begin to do your decimals now, and you could have done this earlier, so I'm going to take 1,000 divide by 919.30. And then we'll round to like 4. That's kind of a good basic thing to do. So that's going to give 1.0878 minus 1 equals 0.2308R like that. Okay, so I'm going to take that number that's in the calculator, subtract 1. Okay, so that'll give 0.0878, okay, equals 0.2308R, and then the last thing you do is divide by that number. Okay, you got to deal with all these decimals in here on these problems quite a bit. Okay, so we got that. Now you can go to your calculator, and then you would have what the decimal interest rate is. So if I do that number, and you can also, use the, what's already in your calculator if you wanted to for greater accuracy. So like if you take the number that's in your calculator, and if you divide by 0.2308, then we end up having this. And you'll be pretty accurate if you at least use 4 decimals. So we have 0.303 like that. Now that is the decimal rate. So what would the percent rate be? That'd be like 38%. Okay, that would be a 38% interest rate. Now see, that's more algebra. There's a lot more algebra involved in that, but the idea is you've got this formula. Anytime you have an amount and a principal related, that's generally the formula to go to. And it's a matter of plugging in what you knew. You knew 3 things, and then solving the equation. The hardest part of that problem is solving the equation. It's because all the decimals. Everybody understand what I'm doing okay? As far as the algebra, okay? If it helps you to just round the decimals in every stage, that's okay. But go out to 4 or 5, because you could run into some issues on my math lab if you did that then. Okay, so let's see. The next one says it takes $1 million to pay off a loan at 3.5% annually for 15 years. What was the principal? Okay, well, again, you're given the amount of payoff and you're finding the principal. So the best thing to do is use this formula. So write this formula down. And the way you know to do that is if you are looking at principal and amount in the same problem. Okay? So this is going to go like this then, okay? The amount is the $1 million. The principal we don't know. The interest rate is 0.035. The time is 15 years. Do you need to do anything with 15? Like convert it? It's already in years, okay? If it's already in years, you don't have to worry about it, okay? But that time always has to be in years in these problems. Okay, so here's what you would have. You would have 1 million is equal to P, which we're trying to find, times 1 plus 0.035 times 15. Okay, now you got 2 choices on this. This equation's easier to solve than the last one. If you want to just do that whole thing in your calculator there and round it off, you can, or you can divide. Let's just kind of do this like this. I usually find students seem like they do better if they round at each stage. All right, so I'm going to just take my calculator and do this. So we're going to have 1 plus 0.035 times 15. The more decimals you put in, the better. So we'll just put them all in. That's 1.525. Okay, last thing you need to do is what? Got to get P by itself, so what do? Divide both sides by that number, right? Got to divide. Okay, then you do that, and you'll have the answer of the problem. So the principal would just be $1 million, and then divide by the 1.525, and that would end up giving us, let's see, what is that? It's a pretty big principal. 655,737.70. Okay, so that's actually over $600,000. Okay, well, that's kind of interesting. I mean, to get them, if you have a $15 loan that worked this way, of course, you're not going to find one that works this way, but look at all that money you gained. How much money did you gain? You gained, about $350,000 off of that. Okay, so that would be kind of the idea. That's your principal. Then that ends up being your payoff amount, ends up being $1 million. That's kind of big. Okay, when you buy a house, like you will, if you have a 30-year mortgage and pay it off just with and never refinance, you end up paying twice as much. So if you buy a $300 home, pay it off 30 years later, you're going to pay $600,000 roughly. If you do a 15-year loan, then on that 300, you'd probably only be like paying between $400,000 and $500,000. So if you get to home buying, it's always beneficial to get in the short term if you can afford it. All right, go to the next page and do these 2 problems here. Now, both of these, what you want to do is you want to start off with this formula, like I was doing, and then this will kind of see if you got your algebra down okay. So you want to use that formula on both of these. And as you're learning how to do these problems, you got to know, when do I use I equals PRT? Well, that's only if you want to find interest. Once you start having a payoff and a principal within the same problem, then you got to play with this formula, okay? You just want to get everything plugged in, and you want to try use your calculator, solve the equation. You have to solve equations on both of these problems. Remember, if you're debating on what A and P is, it's a real simple way. A is always bigger than P, right? That's the amount after interest. P is the amount before interest, right? So I'm just going to kind of look and see if you got everything set up right. Okay, that's good, very good. That is 0.5. It's a half. If you do, I think you did it back.
Yeah,
You do that, so I just want to help you with that part right there. You okay? Yeah, that's good, because that would be 0.5. Okay. Now that's right there not quite right. You want to have 1 plus 0.5 R. You can't do 1 plus 0.5 because that's got a variable in it. So you would say parentheses 1 plus 0.5 R, then you got to solve that equation for R. So now it's kind of a matter of doing your algebra. Yeah, 0.5 is what you get there. I see that mistake a lot. You got to kind of be careful about that. What's that? That's a 1 in the formula. It's 1 plus RT. Yeah, it's probably good to just convert that to 0.5. It kind of makes it easy on this one. 0.5. 26 weeks is half a year. Correct? I think you do that minus 1 divided by 0.5. Looks good to me. I don't see anything wrong with it. That'd be 50%. Did anybody get the first one done yet?
Yeah.
What'd you get? 50%. Did you get 50%? That sounds high, but it's, yeah, okay. I didn't see anything wrong. Because you'll get 0.5, and then you want to move the decimal to the right too to get 50%. Well, on the right track. Yeah, you're good. See, what you would want to do is you probably want to go ahead and get that decimal on that. go ahead and get the 2,000 divided by 1,600, then minus 1, get that answer, and then divide by 0.5. You're doing it right. It usually still a little bit better if you're just right in this stage. Just go ahead and change that to a decimal, right then. You don't have to, but it's usually a little bit safer if you do it that way.
What am I doing wrong?
Okay, you're forgetting about your R. There's an R there. That's what you don't know. And you can't say 1.5 R, because those are unlocked terms. What you do is you divide by that, so you would get, this right here should say equals 1 plus 0.5 R. And what do? You take this minus 1, subtract 1 from both sides, then divide by 0.5. That's what you did. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at these, make sure we're okay. Some of you had a little trouble solving the equation on the first one. Most of you did fine. Okay, what I would do on this one is just write this as 2,000 equals 1,600, 1 plus, and see the 26 over 52 is 0.5. If you ended up getting decimals that continued, I'd just round to about 4 decimals. So doing it that way. Best way to do this to me is just divide by this number. That would be 1,600. I would go ahead and take my calculator now and just get that out of the way, just to be safe. So if I go through and do 2,000 and then divide by 1,600, let's see, that'll give like 1.25. I think that's what most of you had. So 1.25 equals 1 plus 0.5 R. And once you get to that point, just a couple of steps and then you're basically done. So you could subtract 1 from both sides. So you'd have 1.25 minus 1 equals 0.5 R. That would end up giving 0.25 equals 0.5 R. Then if you divide by 0.5, you should have got 0.5 equals R, and then move the decimal to the right 2 to get a 50% interest rate. That's what that is. Okay? All right? Everybody got that okay and understand what I'm doing there? Okay, the next problem's easier. It's more of, to me, it's a little simpler algebraically. This one you would set up like this. It takes 800 to pay off, so 800 is your amount. You don't know the principal. It says what's the original loan amount, so that just stays like it is. You would have, the rate would be 45%, so you change to a decimal. 90 days, you do 90 over 360 to change that to a year. Okay? And then you can do this a couple of ways. If you want to, you can go ahead and just do what's in parentheses all in one step. That's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do 1 plus 0.45 and then parentheses 90 divided by 360. You could also reduce that fraction before you do it. So you'd end up getting 1.1125p, and then you can divide both sides by that number, and then you should have the answer to the problem. Okay, so I'll just take 800 and then divide by 1.1125, and the answer on that was, is that 19? Is that what you were getting?
Yeah.
Okay, so the principal on that is about $719.10. You always round these things off to 2 decimals. Okay, that's the idea. Okay, are we good? Okay, if you got the first one good, that's a little bit harder algebra than the second one is. So as long as you can get these set up okay, that's a good thing. Okay, last thing I'm going to do on this is I just took this out of the book because it's a good thing to look at. And this is the way typical credit cards work and how they do balances. And I think everybody should know how they do this average daily balance thing. So I'm just going to kind of talk through this example. You'll do, I think, one of them on your review and maybe one of them on your online homework. They're not hard to do. What this problem says is you have this is your credit card balance. So at the beginning of the month, your balance is $842.67. Ideally, you're just going to pay the whole thing off. If you can't afford to do that, then you're going to get charged interest. So this is kind of the way this works. What they're saying is, the problem basically said this. It said on day 10, I think you made a payment on this somewhere in here, if I see this right. Yeah, you made a payment on day 10. You paid off $100, okay? Then it said on day 12, you ended up buying something. Then on day 19, you bought something again, and day 24, you bought something again. So what you get there is you paid that off on day 10. The other things, well, you're just charging and you're adding to your account. So here's how this average daily balance method works on this. So the idea is what you end up doing is you do this. For the first 9 days, you have a balance of $842.67. So what you do is you just multiply that out because you're going to do an average. So you do 9 times that. Now, day 10 through 11, you made a payment. So what you're going to do there is that's 2 days. So you take 2 times your balance. So after you pay $100, now your balance goes down to $742.67. So you multiply that by 2 because 2 days, that was your balance. Does that make any sense what I'm doing so far? Okay, right? Then you get to 7 days. Now, 12 through 18 is 7 days. You got 2 ways to figure that out. You can go on your fingers, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, okay? Or you can do this, 18 minus 12 plus 1. That's the way I do it, okay? So I just kind of go 18 minus 12 plus 1 is 6 plus 1, so that's 7. So for 7 days, your daily balance was $7.99 because it went up because you bought something, okay? Then you go to the next one, days 19 through 23, that's 5 days. You bought something, so your balance is now up to $983. And then finally, the last 7 days, that's 7 days there, you also added because you bought something, so you have that. So what this says to me, and what you need to understand is, when you look at this, that's your, for the first 9 days of the month, that's what you owed the credit card company. Okay, for the next 2 days, since you paid off $100, that went down to that. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, then for the next 7 days, this went up because you bought something. Okay, then for the next 5 days, this went up because you bought something. And then finally, for the last 7 days, the balance went up because you bought something. Okay, well, if you do that on your calculator, you end up getting this. Then you divide it by 30, and that gives what's called your average daily balance. So you started off with $842.67, and because you paid $100 and bought 3 things, that's your average daily balance. Tell me if that makes sense. Does that make sense what you do? Okay, all right. Now, what you're going to do on this is how a credit card company does interest. So it's real easy from here. What you do there is you just do the I equals PRT. So what you're doing with this then, that's your average daily balance. That's your credit card. A lot of credit cards charge in the 20s. Okay, and then that's 30 out of 360. That's 30 days. So if you do that, that's how they figure out what your interest is. So that's what credit cards do. That's everybody should know that and how that works. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, all right. So that's called the average daily balance method. That's how that works out. Okay, let's go ahead and take our break now. 10 minutes. I'll look at that one problem, and let me give you a test. Let's go ahead and do that. When you get back, I'll have to explain the grading on this probably too. Tremor, twin, and Marco's not here. Monica Lopez, Dawson is not here. Liz, Marlon's not here.
So I only, my base score
And
is
2.
but then I got
And then everybody else was in math 93, so everybody else should have got it.
swear.